we have increasingly become over-reliant on government in terms for our material needs, not least of which because of inflation going out of control. And more people every single day are turning to government to sustain themselves. And the question is, what's the problem with this? What's wrong? Baruch Hashem, the government's giving out things. They're taking care of us. Daddy government, as they say. We know this isn't Torah's way. Torah always focuses that we have exactly one source of income. And that's the same source, that's the source of the whole world, which is Hashem. And we should always look to turn to Him. We should never rely on anything else. Not on a boss, not on some rich uncle I have, and not on government. In fact, least of all on government. Why? So I was thinking today about a book called Ordinary Men. The book describes how the Gestapo were trained and how they could mamish commit atrocities against the civilian population. Just unbelievable evils beyond which we can't even imagine. And as the book very wisely puts it in its title, these were ordinary men. These were normal people. These weren't, they didn't go to the monster factory and find, crazy psychopaths and murderers. They found conscientious people which had jobs like you and me. And they turned them into real monsters. And they document it. They go through exactly how it was done. So one point on that, they ask these people, why did you sign up to be the Gestapo? Why did you sign up to do these atrocities? And they gave quite a few answers. One of them, which I felt really stuck out to me, was somebody has to do it. And if it's not going to be me, it's going to be somebody else. And I don't want to abandon my brothers, and in come the rationalizations. Now, there's no doubt that the Nazis were Amalek. Without question, they were Amalek. So you will know Amalek by the fact that they will literally choose to die as opposed to you commit self-sacrifice to kill Yid. And we know towards the end of the war, Hitler, was allocating resources required for the front lines, and instead diverting them to the camps to kill more Jews. So, the most important thing is a Jew dies. Me, myself, who cares? It's mamash, Havdel of those, Mesiras Nefesh to kill a Yid. That's what the Amalek had. Otherwise known as just a klipa, irrational klipa. Often, when you want to see something, you look at the opposite. You go from the opposite, and then, you can see the mirror reflection of that. So we all know that we have shtus kedusha. What's shtus kedusha? We have to do what we have to do. I was thinking about Breslev and Litvish, the Breslev approach, the Litvish approach, to Torah. Breslevs are very, very happy, always happy. Litvish have the more reserved, what's the word I'm looking for? Introverted kind of Gvuradika approach. Now, Lubavitch could be confused to be happy, but that's not where we start. We start with, you have to do what you have to do. When the Soviet Union was still, alive and kicking, there was a contingent of Lubavitch Yidden who were from in the Soviet Union, managed to escape and came to America. And the Rebbe was, obviously elated to see them, and he sent them to Rav Moshe Feinstein, because, the Rebbe and Moshe were very, very close. So, and Rav Moshe would appreciate that, Yidden in Russia who were still from, unbelievable, So, they went to talk, and Rav Moshe asked each of them, how did you stay from in Russia? And each of them gave their answers. But one person answered, what do you mean? Because you have to do what you have to do? And that inspired Rav Moshe. Rav Moshe liked that answer. You have to do what you have to do. That's where Lubavitch starts from. We start with, you have to do what you have to do. The rationalizations come after. The joy even comes after. Because of course, but you have to do what you have to do. Anyway, I digress. So, this is the root of it. It's shtus kedusha. You don't think about it, you do it. Where were we going with all this? If you'll give me one more second to just gather my thoughts. Right, reliance on government. So, the question that came into my mind, what allowed the population to just quietly stand on the side while these atrocities were being committed. People taken away, people murdered, mass graves. You could smell they were able to smell burning flesh for God knows how many miles. That's how, that's how large these mass burials and mass crematoriums were, or mass burnings they would have, excuse me. It was more out in the fields. And the answer is with an over-reliant population. And people were reliant on government, again, due to hyperinflation, again, due to after the First World War, there was a tremendous amount of sanctions on Germany, a tremendous amount of penalties placed on Germany. And so again, people were reliant on government. And when you're reliant on government, and government comes and hands out things to you, they pacified the population by giving the population the money of the Jews. People sat quietly because they were also suffering. They also needed money. They also needed food, and they relied on government. That's the whole idea. Nazi stands for National Socialist Movement. And it was very baked into the core ideology. The government gives you. So because of that, people stayed quiet. Why? Because the government managed to first create a dependence on them and then pacify the population by taking away the money from the Yidden, which they would slaughter in mass, and giving it to the Goyish neighbors so they stayed quiet. I'd like to give one last point on this subject, just something unbelievable. Thomas Sowell, who is an economist/historian, he says, just in case you might be deluded to think, oh yeah, the Germans were horrible, terrible people. But, us here in America, Americans are different. He says a point which is terrifying. Throughout history, Germany were one of the kindest nations to Yidden. The furthest, the most progressive and the most open in terms of giving Yidden liberty was in Germany. And he says, if the Holocaust had come out of France or Russia, it would make sense. They have a long history of Amish, harming Yidden and making pogroms and, having many, many, many laws put against them. But the fact that it came out of Germany, of all places, he said if it can happen there, it can happen anywhere. So don't be deluded into thinking that we're all safe and everything is good, and don't worry. The more dependent people come on government, the more open they are to allowing atrocities to be committed as long as they're being pacified. So, point being, you have to, Oyev Shalom, Bereid Shalom, Oyev Feedem, Bereid Freedom. We have to make sure that we remember to never, ever, ever become dependent and always appreciate and understand it's only Hashem who provides, only Hashem who gives. When you depend on a person, one, he might not know if he might be very merciful, but he doesn't know your problem. Or he might know your problem, but he's not merciful, he doesn't care. I have my own thoughts to worry about. Hashem always knows, and Hashem always cares. All Hashem wants of us is to trust Him. You trust Hashem, and Hashem carries you through the rest. I'll say one last story, just a beautiful story of the Baal Shem Tov. So I heard this over Shabbos. There was a Yid, and he heard the Baal Shem Tov was coming. He started to prepare a whole lavish meal. While he's in the middle of preparing, there's a knock on the door, tough knock. And he's ignoring it. So people say, why are you ignoring this knock? He said, oh, don't worry about it. That's a tax collector. And I don't have to answer him. I have 3 knocks before I have to go. People say, what do you mean, the tax collector? What's going on? He says, look, I have to pay rent. I owe 300 ruble, an enormous sum of money. I don't have it, so I don't have anything to do, so whatever, I'm going to continue preparing. And he goes on his day like nothing's happening, happy about Baal Shem Tov's coming, excited, etc., etc., etc. Anyway, so comes the second knock, and again, no sign of, not worried, not nervous, just ignores the knock. Comes the third knock, and okay, now he has to leave. Puts on his coat, and he walks out, and they say, what are you going to do? You have the money? He goes, no, I don't, but don't worry, Hashem will provide. Amish like that, stone cold. Anyway, as he's walking, or watching him, he goes to the first intersection, a wagon pulls up, stops in front of him. 2 guys come out, talk to him, back and forth, they go back in, they leave. They come back, they drive to a few hundred feet, they bring the wagon back around, again they talk, they hand him a bag, and they leave. He walks to the pirates, and they were sure he was going to be thrown in the dungeon. The soldiers were going to come, throw out everybody from the house, to take him and his family, put him in the pit, as they say. No, he comes back all happy. They say, oh, what happened? What happened? They're all curious. So he said, as I was walking, a wagon pulled up. There were two Goyish merchants, which I know, and they ordered an enormous amount of mashke. And I told them, I can make it for you, I have it. Two conditions. Number one, I want payment up front right now. Right now or nothing. Number two, I want 300 ruble, which was a tremendous amount of money, like even more than the mashke would be worth. And they say, you're crazy, right now, we could do right now, but 300 ruble, no way, we can't do that. He goes, no, 300 ruble or nothing. Anyway, so they left. They turned back around, and they said, we thought about it, we really need this mashke, we're going to do it, and we trust you, we know you're good for your word. And they gave him 300 ruble. On the way, walking into the lion's den, and right there and then, Hashem gave him. So anyway, point being of the story, point being of this talk, remember to trust in Hashem. When we start to trust others, we can literally become the most perverse, horrible people when we put our trust elsewhere. Necessity, or the concept of feeling like you have no other options, will bring people to do the most horrendous things. Remembering that Hashem has us, Hashem loves us, Hashem gives us, and we truly have nobody else to rely on but Hashem. That's going to keep us on the straight and narrow. Everybody has a wonderful, wonderful week.